Hi everyone, in this tutorial we are going to look at 4 different styles of management and the vocabulary and concepts associated with those 4 styles. So management styles are really important for a number of reasons because a manager's approach sets the tone for team motivation and engagement. Authority and decision-making styles influence how tasks are executed and goals are met. Collaboration and empowerment foster trust and encourage initiative among team members. But there is a caveat to that, which I'll come back to. Leadership style directly affects the overall culture and productivity of the team. Now, often leadership styles can be based around individual personalities, but they're often context specific in the sense of the culture of either the business itself or the place where that business is. So for example, business culture in Germany is different from business culture in Colombia, which is different from business culture in Oman, let's say, to take 3 random examples. So leadership styles and the expectations that leaders might have will differ based on the person, but also based on the environment as well. So we're going to look at 4 in particular leadership styles: autocratic, democratic, transformational, and laissez-faire. So in an autocratic management style, the decisions come from the top, the involvement of the team is pretty low, and communication is directed. That is to say, the ones who are in charge tell the ones under them in the hierarchy what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. This is autocratic. Democratic means that decision making is shared. So the management will listen and pay attention to the ideas of their team. So the team is involved a lot, and communication is open, going both up and down the hierarchy. Typically in Europe, this tends to be the way that things are done. Transformational is a style of management where, as the name suggests, those in charge are trying to make big changes to the way things are done. So there is involvement from the team, from those below them in the hierarchy, but perhaps somewhat limited because the team often doesn't have the big picture that those in charge do. And communication tends to be sort of top down, but it seeks to be motivational rather than directive. So a transformational management will try to achieve buy-in and consensus rather than impose ideas regardless of what other people think of them. Laissez-faire, which is a French phrase that we used in English, means that the management are there in sort of an oversight way, but they're not involved very much in decision making. Team is highly involved, and team probably runs the majority of what's going on, and communication tends to be quite informal. So this can happen, for example, when a manager has confidence that they have a very competent and motivated and professional team who have the skills and the ability and the drive, let's say, to take care of things for themselves, and the manager is there sort of like in a consultancy role if they are needed. And so this is laissez-faire attitude, laissez-faire way of managing. So pretty much the direct opposite of autocratic, right? So to go into these a little bit more, so the autocratic style means that the manager makes decisions independently and expects team members to comply without input. The manager has complete control. The manager also has complete responsibility if things go wrong. So it's pros and cons for those who are under the management. The strength of that is it provides clear direction and enables fast decision making, which can be crucial in urgent or high pressure situations. Just one person saying, okay, we're going to do it this way, and if it goes wrong, I'm going to take responsibility. That can be quite effective. The weakness, obviously, is the style can reduce creativity and lower morale, as employees may feel undervalued or restricted. It's not particularly pleasant to work under an autocratic style of management. Sometimes jobs don't necessitate creativity. It could be a process job where no creativity is needed. But generally speaking, people like to feel like they have a voice and that they're important and not just unthinkingly following orders. Key vocabulary around the autocratic style: authority, control, directive, compliance, and efficiency. So for example, an autocratic manager values efficiency and control. Democratic style. A democratic manager actively involves team members in decision-making processes, encouraging collective input and shared responsibility. The strength of this is that the style encourages creativity and innovation by valuing each member's ideas, and it builds trust within the team through inclusive collaboration. The weakness is that while fostering engagement, this approach can slow decision making or even paralyze decision making in the worst case, due to the need for consensus and extensive discussion. Key vocabulary we would associate with democratic style: participation, consensus, collaboration, input, engagement. For example, let's gather everyone's input before making the final decision. As I said, in Europe, certainly Western Europe, this is often how things are done. Transformational style. A transformational manager inspires and motivates employees to achieve shared goals by fostering a shared vision and enthusiasm. Strength of this is a style boosts team morale and encourages innovation, helping organizations adapt and grow effectively. The weakness is that transformation leaders can sometimes lack focus on details or practical aspects needed to implement ideas. So they have the big picture, but not necessarily the clearest idea of sort of the reality of managing the details. Key vocabulary here: visionary, inspire, motivate, innovation, change-oriented. For example, transformational leaders communicate a clear vision for growth, inspiring teams to embrace change and innovation. And then laissez-faire style. Laissez-faire would literally translate as leave to do. Right, this would be the idea. So hands-off approach, we could call it. So the definition of laissez-faire style of management is a manager who gives employees the freedom to make their own decisions and manage their work with minimal interference. Strength of that is the style builds trust between managers and employees and encourages independence and self-motivation in the team. The weakness is that the approach can lead to a lack of direction or accountability if employees are not clear about expectations or goals. Key vocabulary they associate with this type of management style: autonomy, independence, self-management, minimal supervision. For example, a laissez-faire manager trusts employees to manage their own work without constant oversight, or without any oversight really, in a truly laissez-faire style. So if we think about how these concepts can be best applied, autocratic management is best for crisis or routine work. So when decisions have to be made quickly, or when we talk about a job that doesn't really require creativity, it requires precise adherence to a process. That's when autocratic can work. It can hurt morale because people don't really feel engaged with what's going on. Democratic is great for creative teams, but can slow down the process. Transformational is great for making important changes and necessary changes as companies modernize, but can suffer from over-idealism and maybe lack of detail. Now, by over-idealism comes from the word idealism, too much idealism. So the transformational manager, the transformational leader has in their mind the goal they want to get to, what they want to achieve, but maybe that's not fully realistic given the sort of realities of the day-to-day, or better, let me rephrase that. It might not be realistic based on the day-to-day realities of the situation in the business or in the department. Transformational leaders often focus on the goal without being fully aware of how they're going to get there. Laissez-faire is for skilled, independent teams, so when the manager really trusts that his team have both the technical ability and the motivation to do things well. And the key challenge there is a lack of control, lack of accountability as well, because if it goes wrong, in theory, the manager should be in charge, but if the manager's left the workers as being independent, it can become a little bit ambiguous about who's responsible for what. So language for describing different management styles. She takes a hands-on approach, actively engaging with her team to solve problems. So that would be probably associated with an autocratic style of manager, someone that takes control of things. He's known for his collaborative leadership, encouraging teamwork and shared decision making, so to associate that with democratic management. Their CEO has a visionary mindset, focusing on innovation and long-term goals, maybe at the expense of the day-to-day realities. This manager prefers a top-down structure, clearly directing tasks and expectations. Managers adjust their style to fit the situation, showing flexibility in leadership methods. So sometimes, different managerial styles can be more appropriate for different occasions. So for example, bring it back one, a manager who is generally laissez-faire, if they have to manage suddenly a crisis or something that needs done very fast, they might say, you know what guys, this is how we're going to do it, and it has to be done like this, and that's all. So it's not unusual for a manager who typically manages in one way to manage in a different way depending on the situation. I think good managers would adapt like that. I don't think you can be too fixed to one style. Also, you can't always be transformational. Sometimes things are okay and don't need to be transformed. So it can be context specific as well, not necessarily based on the personality of the manager themselves. Some things to think about and reflect on. Think of a manager or leader you know and identify which management style they use, or maybe which management styles. Could be more than one. Give one reason why you think this style fits their approach. You can try and describe your own management style using 3 adjectives. Again, if you're already a manager, what's the reality? If you would like to be a manager, how do you think you would manage? Think of some examples to illustrate how these adjectives show your style in action, again in reality or hypothetically. Remember, effective leaders are flexible. They know when to lead, when to guide, or when to step back. And that's one of the key things about management. When your team needs your input and when it's a good time to step back and let them get on with it. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you in the next tutorial.